This is not all the books I've read in the past 2 months. And like when I look at it like this, I'm like, that's a lot of books. But I feel like it's not a lot of books, and in fact I feel like I'm behind. But that's just peer pressure on myself. There's one book here that's too big to put in this pile, and then there are another 3 books. 1 my mum's reading and 2 ebooks. So let's just go through them. I'm gonna try and not edit this video purely because I want to learn how to not waffle and give myself less work in that sense. So we're going to start from the beginning, and we're going to have to do it like this because there is no other way I'm getting this done. So, Charm. I feel like I left this too long. Like, I think I should have like done a video when I got about halfway through. So, learn my lesson. But Charm by Tracy Wolff. If you are new here, you won't know that one of my favorite series is the Crave series by Tracy Wolff. Love this series so much. It's a fantasy series. It's the only fantasy series or like books in general that I really love. It's just so fun and easy and simple, and all the plots are like captivating. This was the 5th book in the series. I think there's 1 more coming out and then that's it, and I don't want to talk about it because that hurts my feelings. But this one was, I think, my favorite of the entire series. Every time I read it I'm like, okay, no, she can't do better than this one, she can't do it, but she does. This was the best of this series in my opinion. The first one and this one I think are my favorites, but the second one was good too. I don't know. Anyways, I give this a 5 stars because it was just so good. And it's definitely, the thing is like if you pick it up and you read it, you're like, Mia, this is not like some next English literature book. That's not the point. The point is that it's a fun book and the plots are great and it's just like so easy to read and it's not badly written and the characters are so lovable, and there's just so much to this series that I love. So 5 stars, Tracy Wolff, as per usual. Then we have, this is one of my, another favourite fucking series of mine. And I'm so sad that this is the last book of the series, but Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This series means so much to me, and this book in general probably meant the most to me out of all 3. It's about, the series in itself is about 3 brothers who are billionaires and each of their love stories, and this one in particular was about an addict and how that messed his love life up, and unfortunately hit home for me. So it was just refreshing to read a book that was like realistic in that sense. I don't think it was my favorite of the series. I think my favorite of the series was maybe the second one. I don't know. It's really hard. They all are very close to each other. But would I still give this a 5 stars? Absolutely. It was beautiful. It was realistic. It was new. It's stunningly like written, but not, again, it's not English literature like Oscar Wilde. It's just a well-written romance with all the perfect cliches and tropes. Lauren Asher, I love you. This series is so close to my heart, so 5 stars. Then we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Now this book went fucking viral, and for a reason. When I picked it up, I actually had no idea what to expect, even though I knew of the blurb. And reading it was so easy. I didn't expect it to be such an easy read. Like, I genuinely could have finished this in one night. And I know you're thinking, well, it is a small book, but just like the ease of it is what made it possible for me to think that I would read it in one night. But I tried to like spread it out over a few days, and really enjoy it. And I did. And I loved it. I think it was great. I loved the plot of, first of all, you know, it's so smart. I think it's like there's things that have been done like this before, but the way that he did it was very smart and it was very enjoyable. And there's like this whole Aesop thing to it where it's like they have these fables and it's like they have the morals, and so I think it's like, oh, it's got these morals, it's got this like life moral behind it. So I think it was just fun. I kind of felt like a kid again reading it, but in a good way. Like, it wasn't written for children, but in a good way. It kind of felt like it brought out the inner child in me. And I just love the concept. So I also gave this 5 stars. I know, loads of 5 stars. Don't worry, it gets so much fucking worse. But I think when you read as many books as I do, it's bound to happen. I forgot to say, before that book, I actually read this book. Alexander McQueen. I'm gonna put this back down because it's fucking heavy. But we've had this book in our home for years. I'm talking yonks, guys, and I've never read it. And I very recently, as in like the past year and a half, have super got into fashion. Like, I always loved it, but I'm now super into it. And so I picked it up and I read it and it was really great. It was really cool. Gave it 4 stars. It wasn't like anything spectacular, but it was well written, good read, fun images, gorgeously layout of a book, and like the hardcover is stunning. So with all of that in mind, I gave it 4 stars. But yeah, if you're into fashion, it's like one of those where you can pick up and it doesn't really matter about the content, as like, because you know that you're learning something. But if you don't, you probably would find it quite boring. So just gonna say that. Then I almost forgot about this book. I went on to read A Little Life. Yep, I did it. A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I didn't think I would ever pick this book up. Ever. Never. Not because of the content warnings though. Surprisingly, I just when people were like, oh, it's so dark, like the content warnings are this, and it was like a massive list of like everything triggering possible, and when I read it, I was like the content warnings, I was like, is it bad that reading about those things isn't triggering for me? It's like, it's a book, like I know it's a book and I know it's not real, and like, I don't know, maybe I'm just very desensitized. This isn't going well. I just think what put me off it was the hype. And I've said this in previous book videos before, where it's like, and with movies, it's the same with everything. It's the same with movies, music, everything. If something's so hyped, I almost kind of reject it, and I'm like, if I watch this now, or if I listen to this now, or if I read this now, I'm going to be severely disappointed because it's overhyped. And that has happened, like literally 9 times out of 10. So I let the hype die down a bit, and I finally picked it up. And I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I did. It was such a good, beautiful book. I didn't expect to get so attached to the character, and I didn't expect for it to be the kind of plot that I was. I think when you get a content list that is just full of warnings and like all the bad stuff possible, you're kind of like, well, what kind of plot could possibly fit into this that's just not like blood and gore and like all around just shit. But Hanya knows what she's doing. This is a stunning book, and you're looking at it and you're overwhelmed by the size. Like, even me, an avid reader, was overwhelmed by the size. But I read it so quickly. I think I read it in 4 days. Because I was just so in love with it. And it was just an absolute page turner. And it was queer as well, which I love as a queer person. And I just felt deeply, deeply connected to the characters in this book. And I understood all of their personalities and their traumas, and I just think it was just executed as perfectly as anything can be. So I obviously gave this a 5 stars as well. So then we went on to the second book of Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is Tales from the Cafe. My local bookstore doesn't have the third one, which is the dark blue one, but I really want it because, again, so easy to read. It's very much so nothing different to the first original book, but it's just more, if you read the first one, it's just more stories like that. And I'm assuming the third one is the same, where it's just more stories along that line. If you don't know what Before the Coffee Gets Cold is about, it is basically a cafe that people go to where they can transport back or forward in time and redo something, but it won't change the outcome. They just go back and they all have their different reasons. So I knew what I was getting into, so I obviously liked it a lot. And it was just beautiful again, so I gave this one 5 stars as well. I feel like I'm giving these so sparingly, but just it's okay, you can just be patient with me. So then I read the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. I was hesitant to pick this up, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know why it's called the Happy Ever After playlist. Like, I think the title is very misleading because yes, it's about a musician, but it's not about a playlist. And each chapter has a song with it. And this author has great taste. Some of my favourite songs are in this book. But the playlist itself doesn't actually have anything to do with this story. And the word playlist I don't think is said once in this book. So I think this title is very misleading. I'm gonna put that out there. However, did I enjoy it? Yes, I did. I keep getting scared to pick up romance novels these days because it's a bit like, well, what can you do next? What can you do now? You know, what new can you do? This book was about a musician and a girl who had lost her husband years ago, and long story short, they fall in love. You have your typical obstacles, you have your typical token best friend, you have a dog in it even. And I did enjoy it. I genuinely really liked it. I liked the characters. It wasn't badly written, but it wasn't anything like, wow, you know? So I think, like, I gave this a 4 stars, I believe. I really genuinely did enjoy reading it. It was a fun read, but it wasn't anything new. And I think it's gonna take a lot for a romance to get a 5 stars these days, which is why the Billionaire series, The Final Offer, that book I was talking about, really is a 5 stars because I fucking love that series. But like novel standalones, it's gonna be quite hard for me to give 5 stars to these, I think, these days. Because I genuinely enjoy all romances. Same with movies, even if it's a shitty rom-com, I really enjoy it, but it's just like, it's not great, but I enjoy it, so you feel obliged to kind of give it like a high score, but it's like, but it's not the highest, you know what I'm talking about. Then I read, no I didn't. First I read, what's it called? The 4 Agreements. Now that book is the book that my mum's reading, so I don't have it on me, but I've seen this book everywhere for years, and it's along the lines of all the other spiritual self-help books I've read. Change your mindset, do this, do that. I liked it, and I didn't expect to like it because I think I've read so many books that are like that. What this one failed to do, which is a good thing, unlike the other books, or most of those books, is be like, you can cure cancer, you know, with your mind. It's like, ooh, you know. This one, I think he does mention cancer at some point, and I was just like, oh. But other than that, throughout the whole thing, I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, like, the premises of what he's saying make sense. And the thing is I think this book is one of the first books that covered this whole kind of theme, and I think a lot of people who have written books about the same thing after him have taken what he said and just kind of put their own stuff in it. And I think that's where the lines get blurred, and like, you can cure cancer with your mind kind of thing gets into it, right? Like they mistake his words or their teachings. So I gave it 4 stars. It was good. Again, nothing new, but it was written well. I understood it. I agreed with most of it. Don't know what else to tell you, you know? But then I did read Booth. I read Booth by Karen Joy Fowler. Now I'm about to sound like a dumbass. What's new? But first of all, this cover, gorgeous. The cover of the hardback I liked, and it really drew me in. That's how I found out about this book. I was just in the bookstore and I saw the large cover and I was like, and I saw this and I was like, I love it even more. So I had to pick it up. Now the thing is, I hate books that are misleading, like when that title was misleading, because the back of this tells you what happens. Of the 6 who survive infancy, one is John Wilkes, the hot-tempered but much-loved middle son who fatally shoots Abraham Lincoln in a Washington theater, changing the course of history. Now, first of all, this is why I'm going to sound like a dumbass. I didn't know this was real. I assumed this was a fake story. It's a real story. I'm going to sound really dumb if it's not a real story, but I know that the family that is written about in this is a real family. I'm pretty sure everything in here is real, but it's just like fictionally written, like in a fictional form. But with that one paragraph on the blurb, you go, okay, well this is a book about a shooting. You can see a gun hole in the illustration on the front. It's about a shooting. It's about Abraham Lincoln dying. Now I hate to spoil it for you, but it's not about that. It's about their family, which is fine. But literally the shooting doesn't happen until like the last page. Pretty much. And so when you read the blurb and it's like, it changes the course of history, blah, blah, blah. It's like, wow, this book is going to be about the change in history. And when you read it and it's not. So don't pick this up assuming that, because it's misleading. It's not about that. However, I loved how this was written. This is definitely more so along the lines of Oscar Wilde English literature kind of thing people sometimes search for. I've never really read something, look at that, sexy, that is so bluntly written, but I like that, and it makes sense because a lot of it is fact from what I know or assume, and it's just a very interesting take on something factual, and so I really enjoyed it. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I just, again, it's just one of those things where it's like, I feel a bit misled, but it's fine. So I do 100% recommend reading this. It was a very good read. It's gotten prizes, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the Booker Prize 2022 longlisted. So it's a very good book, very well written, but I would give it 4 stars. Nothing amazing, but it was very good. Then, okay, you guys can't judge me for this one. Just saying. Just saying, don't judge me. Don't judge me. Then we have The Anthropocene reviewed by John Green. Ever since John Green released this, I wanted to read it. And the reason I didn't is because it is non-fiction. And when it was released, I wasn't really in my non-fictional era. So I was a bit like bummed, because I love John Green. I think he's a great writer. I think his books are fucking brilliant. I don't care what anyone says, they're all fucking so good. And it's sad because in this book he talks about how he's not going to return to fictional writing. I literally almost started crying when I read that. But when I looked into the reviews of this book a while ago, it was very mixed, and I thought, that sucks because I love John Green, and so I don't want to read it and then like not like it. But first of all, this book cover is ahead of its time. Let's be real. The aura aesthetic, John Green did it first. What did he not do first? Secondly, the concept of it is it's a bunch of essays about random things, and that to me sounds like bliss. As a writer, there are constantly things in my life that I experience or see, and it can be as small as an object or an interaction, and you want to write a whole fucking book about it, but you know that you can't base a book around a singular thing. At least that's not within my capabilities. And so the perfect way to do that is to write a bunch of essays about all those random things. And so I wanted to read it anyway, despite the reviews, and I picked it up and I read it and I loved it. And I think I wrote this in my reviews on Goodreads and Storygraph and all the books apps that I have. But I believe that I loved this, not just because of its contents, which I loved, but because at some point John Green in this book says something along the lines of he feels like this is his life's work as an author. And I really clung on to that, and I started to read it in a different way. I started to read it in a way of like, this is a writer pouring his heart out. And I think as a writer, I was like, I understand. I get it so bad that sometimes you just want to write about your life and yourself and the things you love because you can't fucking express it any other way. And so I started to read it as his life's work, and I loved it. I think it was so great. I think it's a 4.5 stars for me. Again, his writing is great. It's always been great. He's a great writer. It's a beautiful book. I love the layout. I love the concepts. And I think as a writer, it just means a lot to me. Possibly more than with other people. And as a John Green fan. But I just think there's also like a limit on like how high you can score a bunch of essays. But 4.5 for sure. Maybe 4.8. But it was so fun, and I truly do recommend picking it up. If you're easily bored, maybe it's not for you, but if you're a writer and you understand it, this is for you. Then I read an ebook. So I'm currently doing this thing where it's like you get paid to read books. Before you ask me what it is, I'm not telling you. Why? Because low-key I think it's a scam. Have I been paid yet? No. And I read 2 books, but we'll see. Maybe I'm just being fucking dumb about it. But either way, free books, who am I to complain? Well, I'm gonna complain. They're all bad. They're all fucking awful. So the first book that I read was by Tony Salimi, and I think it was called The Unfakeable Code. Now, the cover in itself was ugly as fuck. Sorry, it was just really ugly. Like, I wouldn't pick that up if you paid me. I just had to read it. So I read it, and it was along those lines of the 4 agreements, where it's like, change your mindset, you can do anything. And so I didn't mind the content, and like the writing wasn't bad, but there were a few grammatical errors, and you could just tell that it was like a new author, kind of like someone who is more so passionate about the subject than writing, which is fine and great, but it's just like you can tell when you read it. And I'm pretty sure I gave it like 2.53 stars. I can't complain about too much because like it was just a casual book, and I've read that theme so many times. But then I read another one, which was the most recent one, which is after this. So I'm gonna leave that book until last because I read it last, and I read this in between because I needed a book that was real. I don't feel like these ebooks I'm reading are real. So this is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I've heard a lot about Tessa Bailey, haven't read her books before, heard quite a bit about her books. Mixed reviews, you know, but that's the same with almost every romance, so I picked them up anyway. And I saw this and I was like, you know what, why not? And all I'm gonna say about this book is anal. I wish I was joking. Not even anal sex, just anal stuff. I don't even want to go into it. Listen, I'm not here to kink shame. It's just not up my street. It's just really not. And you almost feel like it's happening to you when it gets brought up, because you're like, what the fuck? It was, how do I describe this book? It was okay written. I feel like the female character didn't have enough personality for me to like love her, but I did feel very connected to the male character in this. I feel like he had a lot more to him, which is ironic because the whole thing is about how she's very shallow and has nothing to her, and I think unironically or by accident the author actually made her quite personalityless. I feel like anyone could have been her, but he was him, you know? He was Barbie, she was just Ken. I didn't like the concept of her story, which was she's this popular girl in a big town America and everyone loves her because she's pretty, and that's it. And it's like, I know that the whole point is that she gets out of that, but actually get her out of that. Give her another purpose in life that isn't just love. Like, give her a fucking personality, please. The book in itself, like the romance in itself, was sweet. I liked it. I liked that it was a bit different in terms of location. The setting was at sea. Not the whole thing, but like it was like on the coast basically. Her sister was the most annoying cunt on the planet, and I just feel like her story was pointless. She didn't really need to be there, like at all. Like at all. And she has a whole book about her romance with another guy in this book, and again, none of it literally needed to be in this book. It could have just been mentioned, oh, she has a sister, this guy likes her, and you know, I would be more willing to pick up that book instead of her character being immersed in this because she was so annoying. So I think Tessa Bailey is shit at writing female characters, unfortunately. I mean, I'm basing this off of one book, so that's a bit strong, but she's good at writing male characters, and I think it's that whole thing of the female gaze of a man is better than the male gaze of a woman. So I think like when a nice man is written about, it's like refreshing. So I like the concept, and I like the male character, and I like the romance aspect of it. Like, I liked their relationship. You were rooting for them for the whole thing. But I didn't like the female characters in it, and I didn't like the concept of the female character's background. So I think I gave this a 3 stars because I did enjoy reading it overall. So that's the last of my physical books, but then we'll go on to the actual last book that I read, which was the second ebook. It was called Just Die by E. Alan Fleisher. I don't know how to say his surname, I'm sorry. My first 1-star reading of this year. Yeah, sorry, it was bad. To put it into perspective, I think like the second chapter is from the perspective of a black man, and there's a sentence that says, "My black ass." Just the whole thing, you can tell, is written by a middle-aged white man, because it is, and he's trying to be like inclusive. Is it inclusive, or it is inclusive, isn't it? Yeah, it's inclusive. And like diverse, and it just didn't work. And there were bits about the R word that were just too lightly sprinkled into there as if it was nothing, and then bits about a lesbian character out of nowhere at the end who was being like hated on by a white guy, and he was trying to show it was wrong but like didn't really do it. But none of this has anything to do with the concept. The concept of the book is about a guy who points at people and says just die, and they just die, and this happens after he has a stroke. The concept on paper like that doesn't sound too awful. It sounds interesting, it sounds kind of intriguing depending on where it goes. Let me tell you, this book goes nowhere. loads of people die, and that's about it. Every time someone dies, this guy who has this power acts like no one's just died. He'll go, man, I'm kind of bummed, I'm traumatized, I just watched someone die. Anyway, let's go get a beer. I wish I was joking, that's quite literally a line in the book. It was, and like this person, like this guy has written this book with terminology that's just never existed in language. Gee me, oh god, like, yeah. Like, and it's like, just, he doesn't know how to write dialogue. That's the issue. When you're a scriptwriter, the first thing you learn is how to write dialogue, because that's essentially all you're writing. You have to know how to write dialogue that sounds like real dialogue. This is an example of someone who doesn't know how to write dialogue. No one goes, hey Beth, want a tea? Yeah, whatever his fucking name is. I want a tea. How was your day? Oh, my day was great. I want a beer. Do you want a beer? Oh, let's go see Omar. Omar, oh my god. Like, no one speaks like that. And like, that is like the best bit of the dialogue. I don't even want to think about the rest of it. I can't. So honestly, if I could give it half stars, I will. In fact, half star. In fact, maybe none. I'm trying to be nice, it's just not happening. It's like a cool concept, but when all you have is a cool concept and no ability to write, especially dialogue, when that's like the main part of your book, just doesn't work. And what I hated was at the beginning, he was like, thank you to my editor, my this, my that, like all these people who proofread, and like, and it's like, you guys hate this guy because you fully gave him the green light on this book. Not to mention the amount of grammatical errors. So it was shit. Do not read it, okay? Just save yourself, please. And I think this guy has won like awards for other books. How? Beyond me. Maybe it was his first book and he was just sharing his first book and then he wrote better books, but I've never seen anything else by this guy. And I think it's for a reason. So I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a lot of information to take all in one go. But hopefully I'll be back with one in like, I want to say a month, but it's probably going to be 2, because I get caught up in these, okay? You can tell I really get attached to my books. But hopefully the next one will be with as many good books, because most of these are genuinely 5 stars, so I feel very proud of myself. I feel this is a very good selection of books. But I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.